Welcome back. This is Professor Phil Snyder, and this tutorial I like to call Telling a Story with Pictures. So we're going to tell a story which is pretty much in that style. That includes animated graphics, animated stills, and mixing that with live action film, archival film, video, things like that. So what we're going to do together is do a short kind of a tutorial or primer on how to do that, and then you're going to go ahead after this is done and do your own story about 60 seconds long. That's what the assignment is. But you're not going to be using mine. I'm just showing you how to do it, but you're going to be telling your own story with pictures that you can get off the web or your own pictures that you've taken, and you can add music. You'll definitely need to add animation because that's part of the assignment. And you can also add narration as I'm doing in this tutorial. So let's get started. I've got Adobe Premiere open now, and we're going to import the assets for this tutorial. So Command I for import. I've got it in the Story with Pictures tutorial folder. We're just going to shift select all these assets. We don't want to import the file itself. And then click import, and there they are. So I have narration that I've already done. I used a USB mic and I recorded this in Adobe Premiere. This also has a music bed, and inside here we have 3 stills that we're going to be using. I'm going to minimize that, and we also have some old archival footage from baseball and down at a nightclub in Weehawken down near the ferry. Okay, so we're going to use a little bit of that as well. We want to start by creating a new sequence. Go under File, New, Sequence, because I've already saved it as a story with pictures. And let's go under HDV. If you don't see that, it's right here, HDV, and we're going to select the smallest version of the HDV type of compression, and that's HDV 720 progressive at 30 frames a second. You can double click that, or you can select it and click OK. Alright, so now we have our sequence. We can go down here and expand the video track and expand the audio track to make it more visible. And notice here we also have a voiceover record available. So if you want to narrate in Premiere, you can do that, but I'm not going to do it right now, but I just want you to be aware that's available. But in order to enable that, you need to go under Premiere Pro Preferences, go to Audio Hardware, and then you go to Default Input, and you need to select whatever USB microphone device that you have. I have these 3 available. This is the USB device that I'm using right now. And then click OK. So yours, if you're using a mic, a USB mic, yours will be different. But if you have a computer that has like a laptop, has a built-in microphone, that's the one you would select, the internal as your default. All right, just a little aside there. So I've already provided you with the narration, of course, and that's what we're going to be using in this tutorial. And first thing we want to do is lay down the audio track, and we're going to time the video with that. So here it is. Let's play it.
This is the story of Roger Maris, one of the greatest players in American baseball history.
All right. So let's choose an endpoint. Press the I key right before the waveform comes up.
This is the story of Roger Maris.
And then that will be our out point. Press the O for out. And we're just going to be dragging the audio only down there. We don't have any video in that. So audio only down into the first audio track, A1. If the waveform doesn't show up, if it's really small, then just, as we have done before, press the plus key. Or if it's too zoomed in, press the minus key. And just set it up so that it's the best for you visually. So now let's lay down the other part. We'll put a little pause in between, a little bit longer pause in between. So just go right before the next waveform, press your in key,
One of the greatest players.
and I want it to end right before we say in American baseball history. So that'll be our out point. So we just have that section there. And let's drag that down, and then we'll place it kind of randomly at this time. Go to the very end of that. We can zoom in a little bit. We don't want any of that next line, so this will be our in point, and then let's run it to the end. That'll be our out point after history. Out. And let's just put a half a second or two. So with that gap in there, it sounds like this in between here.
Players in American baseball history.
We might even want to go a little bit longer than that in the gap, but we'll see when we get there. So let's go back to the beginning.
This is the story.
And let's add our first graphic. And that'll be of the baseball card, the Roger Maris baseball card. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize that. And let's drag that down into the V1 track and spread it out. And that's just about the right size to start with, because what we're going to do is zoom in on it after our fade in, and then but we're also going to rotate it. Let's set the rotation at the place where we want it. Go to Effect Controls, make sure it's selected in the timeline, go to Effect Controls, and we're going to use our rotation to start with, but we want it to rotate, start off rotated at 90 degrees. And I can get really close with it right there, or you can type in 90 degrees. And we're going to have it rotating while it's being scaled up, or to give the effect of zooming in. At that point, let's set a keyframe. Click on that little stopwatch there. And then let's play down to where we want it to be zoomed in full, not quite filling the screen, but zoomed into the full size that we want, as well as have the rotation be at 0 degrees.
This is the story of Roger Maris.
So right, I think at the very end of that first phrase, let's have it zoomed in all the way and rotated. So all we have to do is type in 0, and it automatically will rotate it for us, and add a keyframe there at the end so we can scrub through and see that's the rotation. But we're also going to be scaling it up, as I said, so let's click on the scale there. And I always like to add, in case I'm going to move it a little bit, add a keyframe to the position so I don't have to go back and start over at that position again. So let's go to the last frame there of the narration, and let's scale it up to where we want it. That's pretty good. And then we can check our narration and along with our animation.
This is the story of Roger Maris, one of the greatest.
Okay. So that's pretty good. I think we'll leave that for that duration. It's about looks like 6 frames. Let's go a little bit longer than that. Let's let it hold on that for maybe another second or so before the narration. So let's move that narration down so that it's actually about a second.
One of the greatest.
And at that point, we're going to cut to another still right before that new narration clip begins. So let's bring up that next still will be of Roger Maris with Mickey Mantle. And this time we're going to start tight on them and zoom back to reveal. So let's bring that down into the timeline right next to the baseball card, and let's spread it out there, extend it out. We can move the other audio down a little bit as well. We're going to have a little gap in there. So maybe right about there where the other audio begins. But again, we'll leave that open as far as how we're going to time that out. Now let's go ahead and zoom that in select it, go to Effect Controls, and we're going to scale it and position it. No rotation on this. And I would also advise that you, if you use rotation, use it to a minimum. People don't want to get dizzy looking at your stills rotating around and around and around unless you really want to unsettle them and maybe have them get a little bit woozy and queasy. So let's scale that up. We're going to scale it up pretty tight, and we have to move it down. And we can crop off a little bit of the top of his cap. Roger's a little bit taller than Mickey Mantle, and we can kind of play with the positioning here a little bit as far as in the X direction and up and down with the Y direction. So I think that's pretty good. We'll just go to the top of the Yankees logo there. And so that's a good place to start. Now we've already got our keyframes, so let's zoom back. Let's have it all zoom back all the way to by the time we get to the end of that narration segment. And let's just zoom it back right about to where the black starts to show. Let's see how that looks. Right about there. There's a lot more to this picture that we want to show, but we'll let some of the black show on the sides, but we don't need to on the top, because this is more of rather than a landscape photo, this is a portrait style shot. Let's play with this a little bit more. I'd like to see a little bit more of like down to their arms at least. And that's looking pretty good. Now we can check our animation.
One of the greatest players in America.
Okay, that's pretty good. Kind of a fast zoom back there.
Players in America.
And then we're going to add our last still, go back into it, and that'll be this shot of Maris hitting a home run. He was a southpaw. Let's drag that down and put it into the timeline. And with this one, I'd like also to zoom back on it. So let's start in tight, select it, Effect Controls. Let's set the position and scale, and let's zoom in and position him so that we give him some looking room there. Right about there, we can crop a little bit of his hat maybe. See how that looks. And a little more of the bat to show. That's good. So that's where we'll start, and then let's play that clip.
American baseball history. Baseball history.
So by the time we get to the end of that narration segment, we should be all the way zoomed out to where we want to end up. And this photo is in a landscape, so let's position it so that we don't have any black on the borders. I'm going to zoom in just so right about there is good. So let's check our animation.
In American baseball history. This is the...
So let's let it stay there a little bit after the narration. Let's play it and just kind of get a gut feel for how long we want that on there. 7:06, 7:26. So for about a second. Let's leave it on for about a second to 8:06. Right at the end of that narration,
History.
We're at 706. Let's just leave it on till about 8. So a little less than a second. All right, and then we're going to be adding some other along with the music. I usually like cuts, but in this case I'd like to have a little dissolve instead of a cut between these two. So we'll be dissolving from the one still to another. So we go into our effects. Depending on the version of Premiere that you have, and depending on which workspace that you're working with, whether it's editing or assembly or using all panels, your effects may be in a different spot. I'm working with this version that has the editing effects, or the effects down here, and it's the editing workspaces. So under video transitions, we're going to use the dissolve, and we'll just use the default 1 second dissolve between those two and see how that looks.
Greatest players in American baseball history.
That's looking pretty good. If we wanted to have this next still already moving when we're dissolving into it, we can go up here and select these two and move them back to where that still begins, and then we're dissolving right into it while it's already moving, which kind of looks better to me. I like it. I like a lot of movement as long as it's fairly smooth. Let's add some music. We'll have a music bed, and I've supplied you with that. So go into your project window, and we have this music bed here. That's a lot more than we need, so we're only going to put in probably about 20 seconds to start with. So let's run it down to around 20 seconds. Out point. We want to target our A2 for the audio, so that when we press our shortcut, which in this case is overwrite, press the dot key, and that'll drop it right down into the A2 and so on. We got all these other tracks we don't want, so let's get rid of them. Lock that A2 and select the other ones, and then just hit delete. Okay, that just kind of keeps it a little bit neater.
This is the story of Roger.
Now you can see, or you can hear, I should say, that the music is way too loud and it overpowers the narration, and that's something that's very important. We want to be able to hear the narration. So let's start off with it quite a bit lower. Let's bring it down to, well, let's say 14.
This is the story of Roger Maris.
That's pretty good.
This is the story of Roger Maris.
We can also boost up my narration a little bit too. Let's go up about 2 or so dB.
This is the story of Roger Maris.
And always look over at the level indicators to see if we're overmodulating or coming close to overmodulating. We can even bring that up a little bit higher. Let's go to about 4 or so. And if we want, we can also go into the effect controls and change the levels here as well. So we want exactly 4 dB up. We can just type that in. Okay, and let's...
This is the story of Roger Maris, one of the greatest players in American baseball history.
So we also want to bring them up to match. There we go. Make sure and save on a regular basis. So we've got our music set, and now that we're finished with the narration, let's add some of this archival footage. Since we're coming off of where he's hitting here, hitting a home run presumably, let's find some video in here. There's the beat. Look at the audio. Let's cut right there. Now you can see it's small, so let's scale it up to fill. And we'll go ahead and fill the screen with it. So let's take a look at that.
History.
It's a nice cut. That looks good. And let's add a little bit more just for fun from that fairy. Right where it cuts there. We'll have it go in and cut right there on that beat. And that's where we're going to fade out. So again, this is, as I said at the beginning, just a little primer to get you started. You'll be making your own story. I'm going to scale that up to, looks like about 240, 241 is good. This is a real guy too, but what a character. I like him. Okay, so let's do a fade in from black. Let's go to our effects and cross dissolve fade in at the very beginning, but let's shorten it down to about 10 frames I think is good. So it's a quick fade in.
This is the story of Roger Maris, one of the greatest players in American baseball history.
Now, at this point, we want to bring the music up. The narration is done, so we don't have to worry about it fighting. And the rest of it's just going to be the music bed, and that's going to be over the stuff from the archival footage. So you already know how to fade it up, but I'm going to go through it anyway. At this point, hold down the command key and left mouse here, and then left mouse here, and then bring it up to 0 dB. And if you can't get it exactly, we can go into our effect controls at that point and type in 0.
History.
Now, so when it's doing that little run, boom, 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 we want to fade out there. So we can fade out with the audio transition if we want. And just have it fade out right there, and have it fade out with the cross dissolve. Or if we want, we can also have it fade out by doing the fade this way. And I'd like to get it faded out before that next thump comes in from the run. That's a little cleaner. There we have it. So let's watch the whole thing.
This is the story of Roger Maris, one of the greatest players in American baseball history. This is
Now another thing you can do is something we call easing. And as you can see, this
Roger Maris,
stops
one
very
of the greatest
suddenly.
players.
A lot of times I prefer to have it seem more organic so that it eases out. The speed doesn't suddenly stop, but it gradually stops. So let's try that. We'll do some easing. And it's sort of like easing in or easing out of the train station. You know, the train doesn't start at full speed. It slowly starts and then gradually gets up to speed. We do that by changing one of the settings on the keyframe. Go up to this keyframe here, which is the scale. Right click on it and select ease in, and then you'll see it changes to kind of an hourglass thing. And then let's take a look at how that changes it.
Roger Maris, one of the greatest players.
So you can see the scale slows
Roger
down a little
Maris.
bit at the very end, but we also, to get the full effect, we want to change and ease in on the rotation.
The story of Roger Maris, one of the
So see, that's a nice smooth ending to it.
of Roger Maris, one of the greatest players in American baseball.
So if we continue our train station thing, and what it's doing is easing in to the station and stopping.
Of Roger Maris,
See, nice
one
and
of the
smooth.
greatest players in American baseball history.
So let's do that with this one also, since we're going into a cut. Let's select this picture and select both of these guys. Right click on it. And this time, since we got both of them, we're going to go temporal interpolation and go ease in. That'll make a more gradual stop.
Baseball history.
Nice and smooth. So let's watch the whole thing through.
This is the story of Roger Maris, one of the greatest players in American baseball history.
All right, well, that's it. So we're ready to export it. Command M. We want to export it to H.264. And let's go to here and name it. We can name it Story with Pictures, or however your assignment tells you to name it. The assignment that you're doing probably has your last name and then the first name or initial, and then which assignment it is. It might be assignment 1 or lab assignment 3 or something like that. But then save it. So we have the path, double check the path. The size, 1280 by 720. Keep the file size smaller. Make sure export video and export audio are both selected. And you can also preview it. Make sure it's all there. And a little fade at the end. And export. And so it's done. We can go and where we put it and play it to check it.
This is the story of
There it
Roger
is.
Maris,
Looking pretty good.
one of the greatest players.
Thank you very much. Hope you had a good time. Hope you learned a lot. So that's it for this tutorial. Go ahead now and start over with your own story and follow the instructions in the assignment.